jump through here. Now, this is kind of what we're going to cover through today. The class itself is broken up into 4 specific lessons. The first lesson is kind of short. We're just going to talk about the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. That's like all of the different components of Microsoft itself, just so we get a good baseline understanding of what these different things are doing. Lesson 2, we're going to be talking about how to improve our collaboration, things like co-working and different ways of communicating more effectively. From there, we're going to jump into actually how to set up the project team. That's like where you're going to put the channels, what are you going to install in there, how are you going to arrange things that work best for you. And then finally, we're going to finish up with connectors, apps, and bots. The class is kind of, I would say at the beginning, it can get a little bit technical. 2 and 3 are going to be easy to understand. And then number 4 is a little bit more advanced at that point. So again, remember, I'm going to be giving you all the different instructions. So again, if there's things in here that are not appealing to you at all, don't worry about it. But if you want to go back and replicate these in your own environment, you're going to see all those different screenshots and ideas that I have there too. The question was in the chat too, or what are you studying in Colorado State? I'm studying artificial intelligence and machine learning, and my minor is in project management. Now, Microsoft ecosystem. What do I mean by ecosystem? Now, the term ecosystem itself actually comes from 1935. There was a British ecologist, Arthur Tansley. He came up with the term ecosystem just to draw attention to how all the different organisms interact with each other within their environment. So his definition for ecosystem was it's the whole system. It's not just the organism, how they interact with each other, but it's the entire whole complex of all those factors that get us to what we call this environment. So when we're talking about Microsoft, Microsoft has its own ecosystem as well too, and you may be familiar with some of the terms within here. Like obviously we've got Teams, SharePoint's a pretty common one, OneNote, just about everybody uses at this point too, and of course Skype and Outlook. But the reason that I wanted to talk about the ecosystem first is that generally, whenever you try to stay in the same ecosystem, things tend to work a little bit smoother. A lot of times when I show people different things that they can do in Microsoft, people will say, oh, well, what about this? Like, for example, I was looking at things about Microsoft Forms, and I was getting some questions like, well, what about SurveyMonkey? What about this? What about these different programs? Now, a lot of these things will work in the ecosystem, but you can think about it if you take an animal, like say you have a desert-based animal. I've got a pet bearded dragon. My bearded dragon likes hot, it likes warm, it likes dry. But if I try to take that bearded dragon and put it into a colder environment where it's not suited, it might be able to adapt, but it's going to be a little bit harder to do so. So a lot of the recommendation that I always give people is try to stay within that same ecosystem. So if you're already utilizing certain parts of the Microsoft ecosystem, then it really makes sense to try to utilize the other pieces that are in there. Because if you start trying to mix and match different ecosystems, like if we take some of our Google things and mix them in with the Outlook things, it gets a little bit fussy. Now, I will say Microsoft and Google are improving their interconnectivity, but there's still some constraints there. So just be aware of that. My recommendation is that we always try to stay within the same ecosystem, the same bubble of programs, and most of the things from that point just move a lot smoother as they go through the system. Now, the first parts of this ecosystem that I actually want to focus on is going to be first SharePoint, and we're going to talk a little bit about OneDrive. Now, before we jump into more depth, I just want to talk about how these two pieces of technology really drive everything that's going on in the background of these programs. So at its core, both of these two systems, OneDrive or SharePoint, are where we store data and content. This is either your Microsoft project files, your Word files, your PowerPoints, Excel, whatever. This is just ways that those files can be moved around. Now, both of these are based on the cloud. So this is similar to things like if you use an iPhone, your iCloud, or if you use any Google products, it's your Google Drive. The idea of having those files stored in a place that's not your computer. Now, these are some too that are, the OneDrive itself is a little bit less adopted than things like iCloud, because iCloud was always just given to you every time you had an iPhone. So OneDrive is something that not as many people do have utilized. Now, the nice thing about these two elements is that when we're talking about remote work, Sometimes you're not always going to be in the same place. Sometimes you may want to have some flexibility of working in different locations. Right now, we're really still constrained by being stuck at home. But as the pandemic starts to wind down, we are going to have that flexibility of not just work from home, but work from anywhere, right? So if I have an extra laptop and I want to use that one for one day and work somewhere remotely, maybe I want to just sit on my couch and use my tablet and look at my files that way. Using OneDrive and linking up those different locations lets you have things moving better between those different locations. It basically stores the files in a place that you can then access them from any place. Now, we're going to take a look here now just to show how to link up those different files. The one big thing to take away though to start is that with the OneDrive is the cloud for you. You can think about with that name, it's one location for you to share your files. On the other side is going to be that SharePoint. For SharePoint, this is the location where we're going to store files that more people have access to. So that's kind of the baseline explanation going from there. Now, to get into your OneDrive, because we're going to first just look at those individual files, you can access the OneDrive in a few different places. If you are trying to get in from your browser, there is always going to be these little app launcher buttons. I'll pull up my demo thing here just to show you what I mean. So let's say I pull up my calendar here. It's this little waffle button I've got up in the top left corner is how you can always access all the different apps. Kevin, I'll get to that question in a second here. Now, once I'm in here, I can click onto that OneDrive. And you can see that in here, I've got all my individual files. Now, the cool thing that I got about mine is that I've actually got this set up to store every file that's on my computer directly in my OneDrive. Now, this is my personal OneDrive, so I don't have to worry about any people having access to anything like that. But really, the OneDrive is my iCloud. It's my Google Drive. It's the place where I can put all my different things. So what I really like about my OneDrive is that since I've got everything in here and it automatically uploads everything that I do, I can be on my phone and say I want to double check that thing I was looking at earlier, and I can pull up my OneDrive on my phone and pull the document right up from there. Same thing if you're working on a tablet, maybe you have a desktop computer that you use in the office and at home you use a laptop. Syncing things into the OneDrive automatically makes the flexibility of moving files around much easier. No more emailing stuff to yourself, you've just got it in your OneDrive ready to go. Now, once your OneDrive is all set up, actually I'll go through this one first too. Once you're into the OneDrive, you can actually then go ahead and upload individual files or folders directly into it. So you can see when I'm on my OneDrive here, I'll zoom in a bit bigger, I can upload anything that I want from there directly, whether it's an individual file or a folder. The one that I recommend specifically though, well, the browser works, again, that waffle button's always a nice backup. You can also link it directly to your computer. So you can see in my example here, if I pull up my files, you'll see that my OneDrive is available right there. If you're on Windows 10 already, there is a very good chance that you already have this file listed in your files, listed in your folder browser, because it comes standard with the Windows 10. It just may not have been actually fully set up yet. Now, you will see usually that there's more than one OneDrive. You see I've got a personal OneDrive, and then here's my work OneDrive. The more companies that you have added in there, you're going to see all those individual OneDrives, and it gives you a place to then store your files directly. So you can see that if I'm working on a file, like for example here, if I'm working on a Word file and I go to save my copy, I can just stick it right into whatever place I want to go without having to save it to my computer and then go and upload it later. So if you really fully link up your OneDrive with your computer or with any devices that you're going to be using, that way it's going to have accessibility to anywhere that you go where you can just save it directly into those spots. Flea did ask, how secure is OneDrive? There's so many problems with hacking people's information. The OneDrive is going to be as secure as your enterprise security is. So if you've got a system that's already set up with security, your OneDrive is going to be secure from there. OneDrive is like the one place that generally is considered the safest spot to actually put files. I know I work in healthcare, so a lot of what we deal with is HIPAA protected things. And the one place that, at least in my previous organization, they said that OneDrive was the one safe place to store patient-related information. It's a very small window of places where that's allowed to be done. So at least in the situation there, it was given the sign-off for that organization. Now, again, not going to speak to any other organizations, any other governance standards. If you have certain things like confidential documents, or if you work in government industries, you want to make sure you follow your own group's internal governance standards as well too. But once you do have your OneDrive set up, it's going to make things move a lot smoother as you're moving files between different locations. Now, if you don't have this OneDrive set up yet, or if you do have a Mac that's a little bit different to set up the OneDrive on there is going to be some links in here. Remember, I am going to give you these slides at the end, so you will be able to go in and access these links, and you'll be able to link things up from there too. Now, a couple people have asked about using their own cloud storages too, like Google, the Google Drive or the iCloud Drive. Those ones are able to be plugged in. You can attach them in, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit here too. But again, just keep in mind that ecosystem thing, that there is not all of the same cross compatibilities as well too. So you can continue to utilize those ones, but my personal recommendation is to try to just maybe start using OneDrive as a place to just keep all of your individual files. Now, we talked about the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint. OneDrive is going to be the place that you want to keep your individual files. This is something that I'm working on, something that I want to save for myself, something that I want to refer back to later. That one's going to be the OneDrive spot. Now, SharePoint is going to function almost exactly the same. You can see on my steps here, it's the same ones as before. When you access your SharePoint documents list, and I'll show you how to get to here in a second, you can drag and drop those files right in there. You can click on that upload and put them directly in there. But these SharePoint places are a good spot to have their files accessible if you're going to have a team working on them. So for example, if there's a report that maybe I want to have a bunch of people on my team work on, you can utilize the SharePoint page and upload the documents there, knowing that you want to make sure that it can share between those different locations. So there's some nice flexibility of using the SharePoint. And this is a spot where you can then keep things accessible to who you want it to be accessible to. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the SharePoint access rights in a bit here too, because there is some SharePoints where you can set up a SharePoint that anyone in your organization can get to, but I'm going to show you here in a second about the private SharePoints where only the team that you want to have access to those files will be able to get to it. Now, the big question so far then is probably, how does this all relate to Teams? What's the kind of the point here? Now, with Teams, I'm going to quote the CEO of Microsoft actually. Earlier this year, he said Microsoft Teams will be as big as the internet. His comparison was in China, they have this chat app called WeChat. And in China, WeChat is the internet. Like, that's everything that you use. In some other examples is things like WhatsApp, where WhatsApp is just what everything is done through. It's your communication, it's your news, it's your updates, it's everything. And that's the vision that they have for Teams here. Let me see here, just side by side to speaker view. Let me switch that here. I can maybe turn these off if that's more space too. All right. Is that a little better, Florence? Someone said they're having a hard time seeing. All right, perfect. All right. So again, with our CEO saying that he anticipates it'll be as big as the internet, the idea of what they're trying to drive with Microsoft Teams is that they want Teams to be the captive portal and where you experience everything in the internet, basically. They've tried a lot of different things like this over the years where they try to say, like, this is going to be the one-stop shop for everything. And Teams is the first one that's really starting to get to that point. So what we've done historically is that we've always had different silos to think about. For things like persistent messaging, you would always utilize things like your email. This would be like Outlook or Gmail or anything like that. Because when you send an email, that's a message that's going to stay there. We also will utilize the real-time messaging with things like instant message. This could be like Skype or links or any of those different things. And then our shared workspaces when we're more in person, that would be things like our whiteboard or our actual office. But if you're using documents, you would still be using your websites or SharePoints. Now, how this all relates to Teams is that with Teams is now the glue that connects all these other different pieces together. And the way that these different things were previously in separate locations, they're all now included directly in Teams. So your persistent messaging, that's going to be like a Teams post. Your real times, that's going to be the chat within Teams. And then your shared workspace is all the other different things you can add into those Teams pages as you go through. So really the whole design of Teams, the whole point of Teams was to bring all the work that we do in those different systems and just bring them into one-stop shop. So really, again, the vision that they have for it, what Microsoft is trying to say is that we want everything to be in Teams. We want Teams to be the place where all of your workflows become designed from. It's supposed to really be the starting point, and it's really their vision for what things are going to look like in the future. Another quote from the CEO was that he believes that this will be the year of Teams, 2021. I think he said this in January, 2021 will be the year of Teams. And hopefully as we go through some of these slides, you're going to see that he's probably right. A lot of CEOs will always talk up their own products, but I'm personally a big believer in Teams. And I think as you see some of the things that we can do, you're going to see that all the potentials to really reorganize the full frame of work. Now, when we talk about OneDrive and SharePoint, a lot of what OneDrive and SharePoint is building the skeleton that goes within Teams. So everything that you do in Teams, when it relates to a file, everything is either going to be in OneDrive or it's going to be in SharePoint. It automatically uploads it to those different places. So it's really the skeleton for the things that go on in the background. So for example, when you see on here, I've got my team A and I've got the individual channels, but within those individual channels is actually a link, and you don't see this unless you actually open it up fully, but it links to an individual page. So everything that you do into those places is stored in an individual website. So everything is backed up into multiple places you go through. Now with OneDrive specifically, there's some integrations, like if you were sending a file to someone via chat, it uploads it to OneDrive and then shares it with the person that you want to send it to. So again, OneDrive and SharePoint are really the two mechanisms that power everything that's going on in the background. There's some misconceptions around SharePoint. People have been saying, oh, Teams replaces SharePoint. It does not replace it at all. It takes that technology and includes it all together so that everything is nested together in the same program. So you can see here, once we're actually into Teams, there is some tabs within Teams that say Files, and your cloud storage is going to be right in there, and it's all those same files. And the same thing when you're looking at your files on an individual Teams channel, you'll notice that there's going to be a button right in there that says Open in SharePoint, and that's going to pull up that link like I was showing you right here, so you can actually view those documents in an online library as well too. So everything that's done in Teams is really driven by these two different file storages. Now, people have asked before about adding in iCloud and adding in other pieces of storage. You can absolutely do that from within this file spot, and I'll pull up my Teams within here. You see when I'm in here, I can go right down to the bottom and click on Add Cloud Storage, and you can link up your Google Drive or your Dropbox. It doesn't work with iCloud, but at the very least, a lot of your other different file sharings or cloud storage providers can be utilized in Teams. And remember, like I said, there's some of that ecosystem issues that you sometimes can run into, but generally a lot of these different cloud storage areas do work pretty smoothly. So if you do utilize Dropbox with your office, you can absolutely still use Teams and just link everything in there directly. And it's pretty nice that you have that flexibility to adapt it to what works for you. A lot of times we don't have the choice of being able to say, oh, I want to use Google Drive or I want to use OneDrive, as you know, you'll have your company that says, here's what we're using. But again, you can still plug those pieces into Teams and make it a little more flexible. Now, what's cool is when you click on that button, that open in SharePoint button, this is actually the page that's going to open. So like I said, every time you have these things in Teams, there is actually a web page that is in the background. So every time you have a Teams channel, you're making a SharePoint page. I'm going to pull up this one just to show you here. So if I was to open up that SharePoint page, you can see this is one that I've now got fully fleshed out. In this case, I've got a Kanban board here. I've got our product launch on this side. I've got our project milestones set up. And then here's that same document library of everything that I put into Teams. It's all being stored right into this spot here too. Now, this is an example of a page that's a little bit more fleshed out. You can see there's a bunch of different tabs and pages that are added into the side here too. But again, this is not always necessary. This would be something that would be nice for like a long-term project. Like, you know, maybe this is going to be a 2-year project and you want to have a website to display all the different details so anyone can come and check out easily. That's absolutely fine to do. But for some projects, building a website is not going to be totally appropriate. So again, it's really going back to that choose your wow, pick the thing that works best for you. And this is just another example of what you can utilize from within there. There's a question about will we share the recorded presentation? It will be shared with the PMI members. So if you're a PMI member, yes. But otherwise, I'm just going to share the slides with everybody at least. I'll show you one other example of a SharePoint page here you can make too. This one is more like a communication page. So in this example, this is where you could have individual communication posts, like here's our update on this, here's where we're going with this part, and then again, here's all those documents that we want to have available to everybody that's on this team. So there's some nice flexibility there. But I do want to go over how to customize some of those pages now too, because once you're in that SharePoint page, again, you may just want to leave it alone. You may want to do nothing with it. You may just want to place to store your files. But in the event you do want to play around and see what you can add into those SharePoint pages, there is a bunch of different custom options that you have on there. Now, one thing to note is that on these pages, and I mentioned before, there's public versus private SharePoints. Those are always driven by what type of team you have. So if you have a public team, you're going to have a public SharePoint. On the flip side, if you have a private team where only, you know, your 10 project members are going to be on, then only those 10 people will have access to that website. So just keep that in mind as you're utilizing these. If you want things that are only available to your group, absolutely fine. And you can know that by picking what you're going to be putting on those websites as you go through. Now, at the top of the SharePoint is going to be a nice little search bar. The search is really great because it will look through all the files. It will look through all the different items. It will look through anything that's on that team page. So if you continually put all of your project documents into that same library, this search function is going to help you utilize that a lot better because you can find out all the different pieces from there. Let me see if the company adopted Teams or the Teams that we use instead of building out a SharePoint with all these features. So the Teams site, this is actually all still the same thing, meaning this is a Teams SharePoint itself. But with all the extra features added in, that's going to be generally up to you. The way that a lot of the security works on a lot of these team websites is that if you're the owner of the team, you are also the owner of this SharePoint page. So you don't actually need anyone to go in and necessarily build it for you. You can actually then just click directly onto the page and you can put individual things that you want on there. We'll come back to some of what these mean, like the apps list and document libraries. But from there, this is where you can start customizing what you display on that web page. And you don't need to make it fancy, you don't need to make it crazy, but if there's something that's really useful to you, like maybe just displaying a chart on there or putting up a dashboard link, there's a lot of those different flexibility to make that page more functional for you. So can you find files that are viewed, say, in the last week without knowing where the file is filed? You can find anything that's stored on the SharePoint. It wouldn't necessarily show you where it is, and I don't know if it would show you things like recents, but it would be still good in there too. But yeah, please try to utilize the QA function like Kiki said there too. It's a little bit easier to see from there. I'm keeping an eye on those ones, and some of those ones I'm coming back to answering in a bit too. All right. Let's take a look here. Oh, the one last thing here before I go on. You can also customize these individual pages. Now, these are the default ones that come in there. You will see even there's a OneNote that's included as well too. Everything that comes with it as a basic has some pre-existing setups for you, but you can also just go ahead and click this edit button down at the very bottom, and you can add in more pages. So just for example, from the one that I had up here, you maybe want to have a page that goes over our design guidelines, maybe a page that lists out who the subject matter experts are, maybe a page just for analytics. You really have a lot of flexibility to just put in all the different things that are related to your project or whatever you're working on, where it makes things just kind of a one-stop shop where you don't have to check around for different places for your resources, right? All right. Now, from here, I want to actually now start looking more at teams. So I'm going to go through and show you how to set up the individual team. So a lot of what we talked about before that was just the understanding the background technology, the framework that drives what we're doing in here. So again, just keep that in mind that everything you're going to be doing in Teams is listed in SharePoint. All those two things work together directly from there. So really, when we make this team, we're also making a SharePoint. Now, some organizations will not allow you to create a team. That's typically restricted to the admin levels. So I'm going to demonstrate how to create it because some organizations will allow you to do it, but some of these next couple screens might not be available to you. Everything else in this lesson is available to you if you have just a regular license. There's no additional things you need. You don't need to be an admin level or anything like that. Most of the other things are just open to be accessible as needed. So when I go through to set up a team, and I'll pull one up just to do it here live too. This is my SharePoint organization, so I have the ability to do everything in here. But let's go down. I'm in the bottom left corner here. I'm just going to click on this join or create a team. And then from in here, there is this button here that says create a team. Again, this is the button that may or may not appear for you. A lot of organizations have this disabled unless you're an admin. I'm going to click on that create team. Now you can start with some basic ones. This is just going to give you a completely blank one. Or you can also grab an existing group or team. So say you've already been utilizing Microsoft Office 365 groups, then you can actually grab that group and just stick them right into a team. For a lot of different organizations that were utilizing SharePoint previously, they may already have some groups built in there. So just be aware of that when you're requesting a team. You can actually just bring what you already have and just put it directly into a team that way too. But what I do like as well in here when we go into the create the teams is there is a bunch of different templates that Microsoft provides that give some recommendations of how to organize different channels. So you can see we've got manage a project, we've got manage an event. There's even some about onboarding, incident response, patient care, quality and safety, retail. There's a lot of different recommended ways that they tell you that you can set up your individual things. Now, since we're looking at this from a project perspective, I'm going to go ahead and click on this manage a project one. And you can see that it's going to give me a list of recommended channels. In this case, it's a general channel, announcements, resources, and planning. That's kind of the baseline of most project environments. And it's also going to provide a couple different apps. And we'll talk more about apps soon here, but this is the basic ones that it recommends for a project team. I want to go ahead and click into here. Now, I mentioned before we were talking about that private versus public. This is the same thing about that SharePoint page. Remember, we're making a web page when we make this one too. So if we want to make a public page, this might be nice if you have an org-wide project that everyone's going to need to reference to. You can make a public page. That's going to make your team's information public to your org, and it's going to make it public on your SharePoint page as well too. Now, that doesn't mean public to people outside of your org. They still need to be in your organization, but just be aware of those two distinctions depending on who you want to have access to your information on the teams. I'm going to stick with making this one a private one though. And we'll just say that maybe this is our, we'll do this one. We'll do like this, special project team. Now, it does give you the option to customize your channels ahead of time, but I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that create. And while that's working there too, one question here from Kevin, it's hard to restrict teams, create functionality to certain groups. I think it links with AD. Yes, AD is kind of a big thing now. I know I'm recommending our organization try to do more into the Active Directory space too. I think generally some places have just locked it down fully, like to only the admin group as one example. Otherwise, you know, you can kind of do like a recommendation of, hey, don't make it without asking. There's not a great way to do it without, you know, being able to fully lock it down without like that Active Directory access. I'm going to close this while it processes there. Now, I've already made some of these ahead of time. When I first make this one, you see it's going to take some time to process, but I've already made one ahead of time. So here's my special project channel. Now, once I'm in here, could you change it to public and private as needed? At this time, no, and that's a great question. One question was, can you change from public to private as needed? At this time, no. So when you decide to make the channel, you have to make that decision then, and you don't get a chance to go back and switch that one later. So that's a really great question. The same thing is true of channels, and I'll mention that again in a second here too, but channels don't let you flip them from private to non-private. All right, so I've got my individual channel here. Now, inside of these individual teams, let me close some of these other ones because I don't want these ones right now. I'm going to focus just on this one. Where did I put it? There it is. Okay. So I want to focus on this one. Inside of the team, there is a lot of different ways that you can configure things. Now, the biggest thing to notice with Microsoft is they love these ellipses. Anytime you see these ellipses, I recommend clicking it. There might be some cool things they add in there. There's a lot of different functionality that they have. So you notice there's some ellipses on the individual team itself. And then we've also got ellipses up in the corner. We've got ellipses down on each channel. There's always different ellipses hiding around different places. And Microsoft does want you to click them in just to see what's available. So I want to look at actually configuring this team. So when I go into my project here, like this is the one that I wanted to create for this example, I can click my little ellipses next to my channel. And there's a bunch of different flexible options that you have within here to actually go through and edit various things. Say if I want to add a new channel, I want to add someone to the channel, I want to change the team, like maybe change the name, or if I wanted to send someone a link to the channel directly. There's a lot of flexibility you can have from in there. I'm going to go into Manage Teams real quick though. And inside of Manage Teams, let me get my slides caught up here. Inside of Manage Teams, you're going to see a lot of different options that you have available to you. If you go into the Settings tab, you can see that there's all different ways that you can restrict individual things within the teams. So generally, when you get these teams set up, there's going to be the person who's the owner, and you can have multiple owners on the teams. But as the owner, you're going to have full access to everything. That means the SharePoint page, that means the Teams page, that means everything like that. By default, all the members on the page will also have that same access. There's really not a lot that makes the owner too special, other than being able to go in and access these individual settings like this, and to then lock down the members from making things. So if you do have a very large team, I do recommend maybe shutting some of these down, like say maybe it's going to be 1,000-person project that, you know, have the whole organization involved with or something like that. You don't want to have everybody just clicking around things. You don't want to have people maybe accidentally deleting things, so you maybe want to turn some of those options off. There's a lot of different things you can do from in there. Now, there was one question about guest access. You can add outside of the organization people to your teams. Again, that depends on your own company's policies too, so please, you know, check before you do that. But if you do have clients, if you do have outside organizations, if you do have other companies that your project teams are coordinating with, you can add them to those individual teams, and they'll be able to then access all those different things, communicate with you, see the post, share the post, do everything they need to do within those channels. So there's a lot of nice things you can do with the guest access. Again, by default, it's kind of the opposite of the members, where members can by default do everything. Guests by default can do just about nothing. They can see stuff, and then that's about it. Which is, again, generally okay, because you don't want to give too many outside of the org people access to all your different things. I'm going to flip through. I'm just checking the QA if there's anything I want to answer real quick here. Some of these I'm going to do later. Company works in teams. Question about if you haven't used the templates previously, there is not an option to retroactively apply templates. That's a good question, but you can still go in and configure them based on how these templates look. So what I'm going to be giving you is, again, these slides. So if you want to then look at how I've got these individual channels set up, like I did include the event planning and coordination template in the screenshot, you can see that that was their template recommendation as well too. There's a question about deleting a channel you created or change the channel name. Yes, you absolutely can do that. It's the same thing in those ellipses. You can go in and edit those channels from there. Add member benefit, come back to that. I'm going to answer that question later too. All right, these are all ones good questions I'm going to answer later. I don't want to get too off track here because we still got a lot of good content. All right, so yeah, and you can see in those settings spot, there is some more options in here. Like you can add in a picture if you want to add a little bit of flair. But again, there was all those member permission spots, the guest permissions, and then there's also this option for controlling mentions as well too. Say, for example, you want to have these ones read only, where you can't have all sorts of people going in and posting everything. Like say I've got this announcements channel, I can get this one set up where it's going to restrict where you can only message individual people and you can't message the entire group, at least that way too. Now, beyond that, there is a little bit more, and I'm going to come back to the tags one here in a bit too, but within the individual channels, you can do some more management from there. Oh, my new team is now ready, but I'm going to go into this channel one and go into managing this channel as well too. And within here, this is where you can also moderate different options as well too. Right here is my permissions. If I've got it set up where anyone can post anything, that might be what I want. But let's say that I want only owners to be able to post things. This is where you can set up some of those individual moderations. And that can be really beneficial for something like an announcements one, especially if you're utilizing a team that's organization-wide and you want to send out an announcement. You may not want everybody to be able to post different things into those individual channels. So there is some moderation options that you do have available. And again, I got to those ones by going into the individual ellipses to manage those individual moderation settings. Again, all these different settings, all these configurations, I do have included as screenshots into the PowerPoint. So you will be able to refer back to how to get into these places later too. All right. And there's a couple questions about project and other notifications. We're going to come into that to the bots and connectors phase. So we're going to get to that part here too. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the chat as we go. A lot of great questions though. Thank you guys for those. Now, within the individual ones too, I'll go back to my management settings here. You can also change around some of the ways that the channels themselves work. So say, for example, that I want to have all of these channels available for everyone that comes on the spot, or say I want only certain things to show up for certain people. So I could have these ones actually hidden. That way, anyone that joins this team isn't going to get bombarded by all the different channel options. Anyone who joins this team would just only see that announcements, so they know this is the place they want to go. This is where they want to actually see what they're looking for. Now, same thing in here. These ones are all, you can see they're type 2. These are org-wide ones as well. And then this is where we can actually add in those individual channels. Now, I will just show the way that I like to set up my projects. Generally, a way that my team works is that I'm kind of managing all the different ongoing projects, kind of like a Scrum Master role for all the different things that are happening. So I'm usually managing a couple different things at once. So the way that I've got mine set up personally, and I'll use this one as an example here, that I go through and every new project that I have, I set up as a new channel. So say for this one, like I'm doing a cash project, I'm going to make that its own channel. And when you're making these new channels, this is where you can decide if it's going to be a standard or a private. So there was a question in the chat about having those gold documents, those ones that nobody can mess with. In cases where you want to have a restricted place, like maybe it's like you can think of it as like your locked office door, you can make a channel that's a private channel. I'm going to go through and make that one. And then at this point, it's only going to allow people who are actually on there to access it and see the information that's in there. So you can see when I added that private channel, I've now got a little lock next to it. Make it a little bit bigger there. And this channel is now not going to show up for anyone that's on this team unless I specifically want them to do that. So that way, if I have this files location, because each of these channels has their own file that's on that SharePoint page, these are now going to be restricted files that are not going to show up to anyone except for people that are on this private channel. So if you're utilizing things like a vendor group, you may want to have your office part, and then you can have the public part that you want those vendors to be able to see, whereas this part here is only going to be for our internal team to see. So that's where you can get into some of that flexibility of still using just that one shared space for the external people from your organization too. But to get back to what I was saying about how I set up those individual ones, I like to just continually make every new project as its own channel. So let me think, what's the other one I'm doing now? This one. Make this one a standard one. I'm going to add that one as well too. And then every individual project is now going to have its own workspace, its own place to put in whatever my comments might be, to put in whatever my different options might be. It allows me to configure things as needed from there. Now, in some cases, you may want to utilize these ones in a little bit bigger ways. Like say, for example, I'm going to grab this special project one I just made earlier. And this one's going to be my entire project. Oh, maybe I'll grab this one instead. So here's my Agile implementation project. Hey, let me do stuff. Let me just try to fix this real quick. It doesn't want to let me see anything. Show for members. Show for members. Yes. Okay. Let me see the channels. All right, that's silly. All right, well, we'll do this one instead. So you can see in here, in this example here, say this is going to be a large project. Like maybe I'll say this is our implementation event. So I'm going to save that one there. In these circumstances, you may want to then build out individual channels for all those different components. So again, there's flexible ways to do it depending on the scale of your project, the size of your teams, everything that's going on from there. So in this example, as opposed to where I just made the one project equals one channel, you can also make it where there's going to be all the different other pieces of the project, and all those places have their own channel. So for example, this could be my budget channel where I have finance people that can have their materials. I might have my logistics channel where my logistics team can post their materials. And then I've got the planning space where all the project managers can keep their materials as well too. By utilizing a team like this for that larger project team, it gives you a lot more of that flexibility where people can see what everyone else is working on. People can work together more flexibly. If I've got something related to the budget, I can just ping our budget people directly into that team's channel. It's a lot less having to run around, find the people, send an email, all those different things like that. Once you've got everybody into that same team working place, you can directly just message people in here for whatever you're looking for. So say, for example, I'm on this budget team, and when I click on this new conversation one, and I just want to say, hey, you know, can we double check on if this change request can be approved? So I'll post that right here. Now, I could just post this out here directly and just have anybody that's on this channel see what it is. But if I want to make sure this gets to the people who want it, you can utilize things that are called tags. And tags are a really, really cool part that's going to make things a lot more efficient for you in here. The way that tags work is that it's then sets up as an @. So if you want to @ any individual person on here, I can do my @, and I'm the only person in this company, so I can't really do anyone more than myself. Yeah, it wouldn't let me do myself. But you can put their name on that one, and then they're going to be able to make sure that they see that post. But let's say that I'm working with a larger team. Let's say that my finance team is 10 people and I don't know who is going to actually respond to this one. And I don't want to go in and type in all those 10 names of those people every single time. So what I can do in that case is set up some individual tags. So I'm going to go back into my manage settings for this channel. And into these ellipses here, I have one that says manage tags. Now, I really like tags because it's going to help you notify that whole group of people quickly and easily. So I'm going to create this tag here. And let's just say I want to make this tag my finance team. From there, if you've got all these people on the finance team already, that's when you can go ahead and set up that individual tag. So I could put myself in here. And then this way, I'll create this channel tag real quick. This way, if anyone is in here and wants to make a post and wants to ping everyone in finance, you just do @finance. Shows one person has this tag. Everyone with that tag is going to get a notification saying, here's a post you want to pay attention to. So when I make this post, you can see that since I'm in that tag, it pops up in red for me. And if I hadn't have already cleared the notification by seeing the post itself here already, I would have gotten a notification up here saying you've got a new post that you're tagged in. Now, this is functionally the replacement for an email. A lot of times we always have that, there's that joke that says, you know, this meeting could have been an email. A lot of what I see now is that that email could have been a Teams post. These Teams posts are going to be a lot easier to have your communication with those individual teams. I know the one that I hate the most is when you have an email chain that goes out to a bunch of different people and say that we go in and one person replies to one, but then one person replies to another, and then you have all sorts of branch communications from there. Maybe one person put an attachment in and then it gets lost when you forward it. Email is great, but it is limited, and I'm sure everyone can attest to how annoying those big emails can get. So if I was to make this one as a Teams post, it's going to allow those people to come in and respond just in a nice chronological order. What gets even better is that when you're talking about attachments and you're talking about individual files, you can attach those files. It doesn't want me to let me do it right now. Let me see if I can drag one in there. Pull this up here. If I want to talk about this file, why is it not working for me? Oh, there we go. All right, upload from my computer. Let's do that. Live event, right? So say I want to reply back and say, hey, here's the spreadsheet that I've got, here's this plan I've got, here's a copy of the change request. And I can post that one directly in there. And then anyone else that comes in to this conversation can see in chronological order everything that happened and can see all those individual posts as they go through. So really, this is going to streamline a lot of those things. Once you get used to try to utilizing posts instead of emails when possible, it's going to make your communication a lot more easy, a lot more consistent, and a lot more clear. Because again, no more of those one person replies to this one and then this person replies to this one. It's when everything starts to get all haywire from there. And I think that's the worst. I get so frustrated when that happens. So by utilizing posts and leveraging tags, it's going to make your communication a lot more efficient, a lot more straightforward, a lot more easy to do. Even within tags, now the tags are going to apply only to each individual team. So this team will have its own tags. And let's say if I look down to my project team over here, I've got a bunch of tags already set up in here. So depending on whoever I want to ping for different things, I could ping our accounting team, I could ping our information technology team, marketing, operations, etc. Whoever you want to do, you can send that tag directly to them. Now, when you get into larger teams, this becomes a little bit harder to maintain because you do have to add in people as they go through. So say I've got this accounting one and I've got a new accounting person on the team now, you do have to go in and manage those tags. So that's just something to be aware of. On larger projects, like we had a giant implementation last year that was organization-wide, the tags were the responsibility of those individual managers. So if I'm the manager of accounting, I'm responsible for keeping my tag up to date so that people are going to be properly pinging all the people that I want them to ping. Again, there's some flexibility from there too. Again, it's right into that spot. You click on the edit, you get to your tags. and you can set them up however works best for you. This way, again, you can just ping directly to the team rather than having to worry about the individual people. And especially on those really big projects or like the go lives where you have 50 million different teams you've never really seen before working, it can be really efficient to have those pings in there so you can get it to, where you want it to go. Let me do right here. Oh, one quick thing too. This is not really what I planned for, but if you look up in this top left corner, there's this back button. You can go right back to those pages. That's like one cool little nice feature. So say I want to go back to where I was looking. The back arrow is actually pretty efficient to bring you back through different things. The big thing that I ran into with Teams when I was first getting used to it was that I'd get disoriented. Like I'd be on this one page and then say, oh, where was I? Again, your back arrow brings you right back to wherever you're looking. One little quick aside there. All right, let me just review our QA box to see if there's anything I want to answer right now. There's a lot of questions. It's great. All right. So Janet had a question, and we've had a couple other questions about integration of different things. Janet's question was, how does Teams integrate with OneNote? There were some other questions about Teams integrating with project and tasks and other things like that too. And that's when we want to get into our part talking about the apps, the connectors, and the bots. So all of what we're doing in these channels, so far we've kind of only looked at the basics, right? Like this is, when I'm here, I can make a post, I can share a file, I can do those different things like that, right? But the cool part about Teams is all these other little pieces of flair, all those other little integrations, all those other things you can add in. So someone had asked before about those templates, like, you know, this one when I made as a template, it's got some pre-made things added in there. But again, you don't have to worry about using those templates to get those things added in. You can add them in yourself as you go through. So this is an example of all of the different Microsoft specific ones that are available in here. Now, your app library on your Teams may be a little bit more restricted. Some of them are a little bit more open. It kind of depends on how your organization decides to set things up. I know for my organization particularly, we only have Microsoft ones available just for security, because again, we're dealing with patient stuff. So for security purposes, we only want to get the approved ones in there. We can, for us personally, again, we can add in third-party ones, but it has to go through a whole approval process and a security review and everything like that. Just again, we're dealing with patient health information, and we have to be extra careful about it. But generally, again, if you're sticking with that Microsoft ecosystem, that's where the Microsoft security is what's encompassing all of this. The same security that is on your OneDrive is the same security that's on your SharePoint pages or any of those other individual apps. So I do just want to go and take a look at some of the apps you can add in. Now it's important to think about, as you're looking at these apps, you want to keep in mind of what your organization already uses. So if they already use things like Project, if they already use things like Jira, if they already use things like ServiceNow, you can make sure you can plug in all those different pieces that you have. Remember, the whole idea of Teams is you want to have it just to be your one-stop shop where everything is going to feed into directly. So I just want to show you real quick a couple ways you can add in the apps. Now, my recommendation for trying to shop for apps, if you want to dig around and kind of see some ideas of what you have, down in this bottom left-hand corner in Teams, is there's this button that says Apps. I'm going to pull this one up. Now, in my example, because again, this is my company, so I have everything turned on. Nothing's restricted because I'm not really doing anything in this company anyway. It's the company I use for teaching, right? So in my case, you can see that this has all of the apps that are available. I'm going to zoom it out a little bit here. There is a whole mix of some different ones. You can get some of the more common ones that you'd expect, like Microsoft Forms. You can plug in. You can plug in things like Yammer, Jira. You can plug YouTube in there directly. There is some other cool little fun apps too, like I found this one the other day. You can actually add in a Starbucks app. And say you want to give your team like a little gift card, you can actually have this Starbucks app and send someone a gift card directly in Teams. So kind of cool little flair things. This app community is basically where a lot of the work is going in the background. where there's continuously more apps that are now having a Teams component or a Teams connector or something that integrates a little bit better with Teams. There's a lot of the different examples, like say again, if you do use Jira, you can add in either your Jira server or your Jira cloud. I personally don't know much about Jira, but there you go. If you do, there it is. Monday.com, you can utilize these ones directly. And I want to say that Clarity is in here too. Not in here. I do know Clarity and Rally also has an app. I just don't see it in mine. But really, everything that you do with your current work can, in theory, be connected into Teams via one of these apps, connectors, or bots. So say when I look at the connector ones, there's all things like our Azure DevOps, Trello, SurveyMonkey, all these different things can be plugged directly into Teams. It's really good to think about Teams as a place where things can be added in as you need them. And you see you've got GitHub, Google Analytics, Salesforce. There's a lot of those different things. Salesforce is an example of one that's in a different ecosystem where you get some friction with some of those ones. Salesforce is owned by Slack, which is Microsoft Teams' big competitor. So there's some integration issues there. But generally, again, all these things are going to be working as you go through and add them in. So this apps button, again, the reason I wanted to go in here was this is a nice place to kind of shop and see what's available. This will show you what your organization already has enabled at least, or that give you an idea of some different things that you could use as well too. So I like to check in here kind of frequently, just to kind of see what new things are available, what's been really popular. Like here's a Kanban option, Swift Kanban. This one's about breakthroughs. All sorts of different things are always adding in here too. So there's a lot of different cool options, and this is a great place to shop for those things that you need. Now, if you're going to add an app in directly, I do recommend just adding it to the team itself. So let's say I'll use OneNote as an example here. Say that I'm working on this scanning project and I have all my project notes. I want to go up into here. I'm going to click on, it's this little plus sign on the individual channels. And you can see this looks like some of our similar ones I was just looking at in the other app location. I like looking in that one just because you can look through things a little bit easier. Once you know what you're going to add, then is when you want to go click that Add Tab button. Let's say that I want to add OneNote in. I don't think I have a lot of OneNotes built in here already. Yeah, so this should work at least. So say I'm on this special project one. It's going to show you all the different notebooks that you already have access to. You could make a new one if you wanted to. But in most cases, you can just use the ones that are linked to the ones, or you can plug in your existing OneNotes as well too. So let's say I'm going to go in here. I want to create a new section. This is going to be my scanning project notes. I want to click on that to save it. And now I have my OneNote directly in here. Now, for me personally, I really like linking my OneNotes in here because since I follow Discipline Agile for my own methodologies, this is where I put my user stories. So whenever I have things that are going on, like I want to hash out the requirements that we have for our project, I want to figure out what we're going to be doing in our next couple sprints, I utilize this spot right here to put in my individual user stories. So this is kind of my jumping off point to begin setting up those projects. So I'll label that here, user stories, right? At this point, I'm sure most people are familiar with OneNote. If you're not, there is some good material online, but it's just a really nice collaborative note space. If you haven't used it before, I do recommend it. It is quite nice. If I'm on here, you can see that if I click onto these navigation spots, this is how I can still get into all those other section and page spots like I'm used to seeing. Now, one quick thing to show just for some things too, in most cases, a lot of people don't like how this can get kind of tight on your screen. Like you've got all this, stuff that takes up a lot of room on your screen. One quick button to take a look at, there's this arrow. It's these two directional arrows that you've got right there. That can make things full screen. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to use. I normally use mine super zoomed out. So for me, that's a lot of nice workspace. But again, I'll zoom it back in because I'm teaching. But that little arrow button right there is really nice to give yourself some more of that room. But what you can always do with all these individual apps, if you don't like how constrained this space is, you can always click on these buttons, open in browser, open in desktop app, and I can pull it up in my normal OneNote. Who wants to check all my OneNotes? Yeah. Oops, don't want to show you actual project notes. Let's find some pretend notes. So we'll pretend like that worked properly and it pulled up all the individual things in there. Again, this is then where I can individually work on those things at my leisure. It's going to then sync everything that I do. So if I type it in here, it's going to type it in here as well too. So if you don't like using it in here, you can still link it in there, and then it's available for reference at least too. So you don't have to not use the actual OneNote if you don't like using the Teams OneNote. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Well, let me get back out of this one here too. Now the next app that I do like to show here, I'm going to jump ahead, is going to be about tasks by planner and to do. Now again, I follow Discipline Agile typically for my methodology, so I use a lot of Kanban boards for my work. So that's going to be the next step that I do when I pull into these Teams channels. Is I'll go into here once I've got my notes in here. Again, I put my user stories here. Maybe I'm going to do another one that says, you know, meeting notes. And then I've got my individual things all related to that scanning project. But then I want to go ahead and add in another app up here. And this one I really like. It is this one that says tasks by planner and to do. There was a couple questions about utilizing tasks or planner or all those different things. This is all the same thing. Microsoft has come up with this new awful name because they combined together tasks, planner, and to do, which were their three separate work tracking pieces. And now it's just one awful new name with all of them included. And I hope they change this eventually because this name is silly. But this is effectively what we're looking at, where this is our task list. So I'm going to go in here and create my plan. I'm going to say that this will be the scanning Kanban. Now notice again, you can always link in existing plans if you wanted to, but I just want to make a brand new one here and click save. And now that I'm in here, this is now going to give me that Kanban board. Or again, if you don't like Kanban, it can also just be a list of those individual tasks. So say I want to go in here and start tracking what I'm doing. We're going to work on our sprint planning. I want to have that due by next Tuesday. And I'm going to assign it to myself. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to add this task. Now, it starts simple when you first add in these tasks, like you can just put in the title, the date, and then who it's due by. But what's really cool about this planner and to do is that if you click this individual item here, there's a lot more documenting that you can do in here, which is really nice. If you want to utilize certain labels, like maybe this is going to be a task for operations. Oops. Then I can have those ones tagged directly like that. Say it's going to be operations and IT. I'll make yellow IT. Oops. Won't let me. Well, you know what I mean. Basically, you can add in all those individual tasks. You can then track the progress within there. Like say we've just started this one. We want to track our start date. We're starting it today. And then I can also update my priority for those tasks too. Now, from there, you can also do notes, and you can even add in checklists, which is really nice if there's going to be more complexity to it. Like this one could be confirm stakeholders, obtain charter, you know, whatever. I'm making up random terms right now, right? But this is all the individual things you can then list into those task lists, which makes it easier to track that work in progress as well too. So that way I can say, yes, I've confirmed that. And you can see that my checklist updates to 1 out of 2. So nice little cool things in there. You can also even put in documents. So what I just did earlier this week is I had a team member where I told them I need to review this report by next week. So for his case, I went in here and I put the report into the task itself, and he then had that accessible to him. What I really like about these tasks is that they will chase you. They will follow you. You will get an email saying you have tasks that are coming up. You have tasks that are not done yet. So these task lists are really, really useful for finding all the different things you want to do for tracking your work progress. You even got the option to put in comments there, like, you know, hey, having an issue with this one, whatever you might need to do. So it tracks all the different things you do from in there. Beyond that, right now, this one's set up as a to-do bucket, but you can add in more buckets. What I like to do personally is I'll do this one as, this is more for my operations people. Here's the task I want you to do. I'll do this one for myself. Here's tasks for me. And then over here, I'll put this one as like IT tasks that I want our IT team to do. So that way, when I have these tasks, I can drop them in wherever I need them to do. And once they're completed, it drops right off like that. And it still stores in the background for you. Again, once you've got those in there, there's different views. You can see the list option. I click list up here in the corner. You can look at charts. That actually gives you some nice little analytics about what's going on. You know, how many priority tasks you have, who's assigned to what, what's in progress so far. And there's also a schedule tab that is going to show you the dates. So you can see right there, there's my sprint planning that goes from the 27th to the 30th. Really, really nice stuff. You can filter more if it's going to get more complex, like what's today, what's late, what are those different options from there. But planner is a to-do, planner, task, all those silly names is really, really nice because you see a lot of flexibility. What's even better is that the actual planner app, you can see I go to right here. If you're on multiple projects, Planner is going to keep track of all that stuff for you, so you don't have to individually go into each one. So you can see in here, I've got all my tasks. This is going to show me everything that's assigned to me, including from different locations. Like this one is a risk management plan I assigned myself from another team altogether, and it all just goes into my one-stop spot. So I can always go in here and just say, what do I need to do? What do I have coming up for me? What's an important task? What's a high priority task? You know, what things are going on from there. It really helps you organize all your individual work if you plug everything into this planner spot. Now, the next app I want to show you real quick too, this is a really nice one as well, lists. I see so many people use Excel for everything, and you probably do too. Excel is great, but I always like to think of Excel is that it's an accounting software. It's for money, it's for transfers. It's not for all the things we use Excel for. Microsoft has come out with their new update to their Lists app, and Lists is way better than Excel for a lot of the different things that we utilize Excel for. So I'm going to add in my List app here just so you can see. Now, you can go in and you can create a brand new one. You can add in an existing one, like say if you made it separately, but I'm going to go ahead and click on Create New. If you currently utilize an Excel form for things that Excel shouldn't be for, you notice it even gives you a nice way to just feed it into a new list directly. Well, let's say I want to go and get an actual project work progress tracker. So I'm going to click on my work progress tracker. Again, notice there's a bunch of templates like itinerary, issue tracker, recruitment, incidents, whatever you need to be. But we're project managers, so I'm going to do my work progress. And let me make this a bit bigger here. This is going to show you kind of what these basic ones look like, but this is how that list is then going to appear. We're going to have an option where we can create that work item. You can categorize it. You can track the progress. You can set the priorities. You can do all sorts of different things within this actual Lists app. So I'm going to go ahead and click that template. Now let's say I want to do this as for my scanning tracker. I'll make it a one like that. And you can see that in here, this is very similar to Excel. It works a lot like Excel, but I can put in a new item and say that maybe this is going to be our develop risk management plan. I'm going to categorize this as a planning task. I say this is a high priority. This is due next week and we haven't started it. I'm going to assign it to me. Starting it today. It's in progress. And then I can develop some more notes in there as well too. Same thing, I can do attachments as well if I want to put an actual file in here. Again, you can't store a file in Excel, right? All the more reason to use this one instead. So I'm going to click save. And there's my line item showing that I have this risk management plan that I need to do for next week. So there's a lot of flexibility. If you want to start utilizing lists for the things that we start using Excel for already, you can absolutely do that. There's a lot of the filtering that you're used to doing in Excel. Like you can see, it's even that same filter button. And there's all individual views. So you can actually look at those things differently within lists. And we don't have enough time to go fully more in depth with lists, but just know that lists is very, very open-ended. One example that I've built with lists is that I have a form. The form is for an intake request for a training team. They go in and they want to request training. They fill out the form. And the form is actually going to drop right into lists, and then that's going to create a line item for any individual person that's requesting training. So it makes it really easy for the coordinators who are working on that to be able to track who is requesting training and if we've actually filled them up with their individual training spots. So really nice flexibility you can do with lists. I highly, if it's the one thing you can take away from this class, play around with lists. Please experiment with lists. The next time you want to use Excel for something, I want my voice to be in your head of saying, maybe we should try lists instead. And I promise it'll probably work a lot better for you because a lot of these are nice where you can't accidentally click stuff on here. You can't just be typing and delete the whole thing. You can actually have these locked down individually from there. And it makes it a lot more flexible to use those different things. All right, so we're almost up at our end here. So I do just want to go over one last thing here. Now, I'm not going to go super into depth with project. You can do more integrations with project as well too. Some of these are a jump where you do project can connect to planner and then you can connect it from there. But again, if you just want to add in your individual projects where you can then see your grid, your board, your timelines, you can do it the exact same way and plug it into those individual pieces. Again, I'm not covering project in too much depth because not everybody uses project because it's really expensive. Everything I've shown you otherwise is just regular enterprise license. If you have a regular Microsoft license, you can do everything. But again, obviously Microsoft Project costs a little bit more. The last thing I want to talk about is that in a lot of these cases, there is going to be some gaps in those efficiencies. There's things that you might be missing that you can utilize. So the last piece is my favorite Microsoft product of all, is Power Automate. What Power Automate does is it lets you do all sorts of different things and it makes that flexibility possible. So the example I was saying where I had people fill out a form and it populated it to a list, that was because of Power Automate. Power Automate is something that Microsoft has available to you that is a no code or a low code where you can go in and actually set up these different things that happen when things happen. So one great example is when you put a certain file into a OneDrive folder, it's going to start an approval in Teams. What that means is that if I upload a file to a certain spot, it's going to link into this approvals app. And if I have these set up, I can directly send these project approvals to whoever I want them to be sent to. Now, you can use approvals as well. This is one more app that I didn't really cover earlier. You can go in and you can click onto approvals and say this is going to be our project plan. I want myself to be the approver. And then I'm going to actually link that file right from my computer. And then I send that right off to my approver, the person who has to give me that sign off. And it comes right into this one here. So you can got a little pop-up saying Sean Moran sent you an approval document. So here's my project plan that someone requested. I can utilize whatever I'm looking for, like, hey, here's that document they want approval on. I can see who sent it to me. I can add in a comment if I want to, and otherwise I can then reject or approve those requests directly from here. Yeah, there's up to 52 questions right now, so I will not likely have time to go through all of them. But yes, as Susmita said, we will try to cover them as much as possible. We're going to do a little wrap up stuff here in a second too, and then we'll come back to opening for questions as well too, because I can stick around for some more time too. But let me just pull out that Power Automate for that last thing too, just so I can show you some of the other options in there. And I love Power Automate. Again, to get to Power Automate, you can do it from those little waffle buttons, like I said. It's that Power Automate guy right there. You don't need to be a coder to know how to do these Power Automate things. They're all set up in here as templates where it's just drag and drop, click and set. It's all about just having those repetitive tasks sped up and be easier. So for example, this is one I really like. I automatically have all my email attachments saved to my OneDrive. So if I want to turn this one on, I click try it. It's going to then connect my two different things together. It might not let me do it because I'm on this connection here. It would work if I was on my work account, but yeah, that's got my private email in there too. But basically you can set up these Power Automates to just make things happen for you based on what you want to happen. So for example, some of the top ones here: schedule a meeting with the person who sent me this message, create a task from this message that I got sent, follow up on a message, get a notification when a file is uploaded. Like say someone puts a new file into my SharePoint, it's going to post a new notification saying, hey, new file was just uploaded. So it's all about cutting down on those individual things. Like, do I need to type up this email and send it to a person to get that approved? Or can I just put it in their approval folder and let Power Automate send them off the message that I want from there? So it's really about just making those nice little quality of life improvements for you to make things flow a lot nicer and smoother. So I do recommend checking out Power Automate. Again, it's from that little waffle button. And when you're in here, you really want to just look at the templates. Just explore through them. There's a lot of cool ones. Like here's one: keep my schoolwork in sync with my Google Drive. So someone asked about Google Drive and OneDrive before. This is how you can actually link them together, so it's even the same thing. So this is where you can bridge a lot of those gaps. And there is some non-Microsoft things in here that are available too. Like say if you use Jira for things, you can do more Jira connectors. But there's a whole wealth of different things you can do. Yeah, like here, if you work in marketing, you can get all the certain tweets emailed to you to track certain things like that. So Power Automate is really great for all that stuff too. All right, that is the end of what I've got to show you guys here. As we're just almost about time, I'm going to hand it over to Kiki just to do some wrap up, and I am going to start trying to look through the questions, and I will stick around if people want to stay later. I'll try to answer questions there, but otherwise we'll try to get the questions sent out too. So let me stop sharing my screen here. And Kiki, all set for you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending today's workshop. Susmita, will you take over?
Sure. Thank you so much. So this brings us to the conclusion of our session. Thank you to all our attendees. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, talented and insightful presenter Sean, for the phenomenal presentation and sharing his insights on how best to leverage and optimize project using Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and Office 365. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Please submit attendance form and the chapter will submit PDUs on your behalf. We encourage you to take a moment to share your thoughts and feedback via survey form. Ahmed and Kiki already shared both the links in the chat box. Your feedback is important for the professional development team. Thank you again for being a part of today's breakfast meeting. We are excited to continue to offer you incredible events like this throughout the year. Please visit professional development page as well as the events page and sign up for the events of your interest. Our director of certification, Cynthia Davis, is building up a study group for PMP exam. Please go and check the event page and sign up if you are interested to be a part of that study group and interested in taking the PMP exam. So enjoy rest of the day and weekend. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you. And we are going to stay here for some more time and answer all the questions. If any question is unanswered, we will share the answers with all the participants later via email. Just give us at least 1 week. And we are going to share today's presentation most probably by Monday. And we are also going to submit the PDFs by tomorrow, and hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, you will see the PDFs are coming on your dashboards. In case there is any concern, any question, please don't hesitate, just reach out to me and I'll do my best to help you out. So over to you, Sean, in case for the last minute. And so, as I said, these are some of the events which we have. And Ahmed, can we move to the next slide, please? Oh.
And now, Sasmita, I think that it is a good time to answer for Sean to answer some questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And actually, Sean, we have 2 questions from Chad that they are not posted in QA. Kevin asked, how to decide between storing files in OneDrive versus SharePoint?
Yeah, so that's a good one. Generally, the rule of thumb, I think, is that for OneDrive, it's your files. If I'm working on something, I put in OneDrive. If I know more than one person's going to want to work on it, like you say it's a report that multiple people are going to work on, I put it in SharePoint then too. So SharePoint is for us, OneDrive is for me. That's kind of my rule of thumb.
We have another question from Katrina. What if you use Google My Drive? Is still compatible?
Yes, and I think I did address that one as we're going through. You can link it in there too. That was the, let me show that real quick again too here. I'm going to steal your screen back, Kiki. When I go to files, where'd it go? Files, you can add in your other cloud storage directly that way too. So it works with Google Drive at least. All right, let me start looking through the QA here too. Flea said, why would you use lists instead of planner? Personally, for me, there's some instances where I find list better. I have one project that I'm using list on right now, and then I have one project that I'm using planner on. I'm using lists on a planner. I'm using lists for one where we have a lot of vendors, like where we have a lot of companies that are involved in that project. So I personally just find list was easier to do than rather than get all the people involved into it, because I can't ping them with the tasks since they're all, not added into our teams. So it's really just kind of the flexibility of what works best in your current situation is kind of how that works. Sometimes I use lists, sometimes I use planner, sometimes I use both. It really depends on what fits best for the circumstance. This question, do you need to fill in all the fields for lists? No, you don't need to fill in all the fields. All the fields in lists are all fully customizable too. So you can go in and change that around completely. It's just like Excel. You want to change the columns in Excel, totally can do that. Same thing in lists. It gives you a lot of that same functionality of lists as well too. Let's see, what functionality does the task planner to do provide for a full company review of recaps or specifically outstanding to-dos across the organization? Laura, that's a great question. So Laura asked what functionality it gives for a full company review. I think project might work a little bit better for like a portfolio review or anything like that. That's when you can utilize things maybe like roadmap or things. I'm not the best with MS Project yet. I'm still trying to get up to speed with how to utilize it better. But I don't know if for like a portfolio review I would do planner. But at the same time, those planners can link into project as well too. Let me see if I can find some of those connectance parts here. At minimum, you do get the charts in there too. But yeah, it's not quite as fluid as using full on MS Project for portfolio stuff. I generally like these planner to tasks is more like a smaller group project, basically. Let's see. Fields. Already answered that. Yeah, with lists, you can use it for anything. Anything you use Excel for, you can use lists for. Suggestion on further Power Automate resources. Yes, Morgan. Microsoft Learn is actually fantastic for learning stuff. So let me see this, Microsoft Learn. Is this it? No. Here, this one. So there's a lot of classes that you can take on Microsoft's website, or just individual things that you want to go through. So what I have, Power Automate is part of Power Platform, and I'll drop this link in the chat here too. And this is where you can go in and take a lot of these classes directly. So, you know, if you want to learn more about Power BI, you can do that. If you want to make apps in Power Apps, you can do that. But there's more stuff in here specifically about Power Automate. Biggest thing that I've done with Power Automate is a lot of it's just like tinkering and learning and experimenting. That's my biggest recommendation for learning Power Automate, is play around. It's a sandbox program, really. But yeah, I love Power Automate. It's the coolest. Let's see, best practices for naming conventions, retention of teams. So Tom, the questions around naming conventions for teams, retention of teams and channels, managing files, etc. In terms of naming conventions, you'd probably want to maybe just agree upon one that works for your organization. Sometimes they have a more standard naming conventions, like at one of the organizations I was with, it was GRP dash, and that was the name for everything. But generally, I think I like the names that are a little bit more targeted towards what we're actually doing. The one thing I see that some places do is they just want to make a bazillion teams, and that's what Microsoft recommends not doing. They don't want you to make a billion teams. You're better to make one team and have more channels under it from there. One thing you can do when you're done with those ones then too is like, say, you know what, say my scanning project is done. You can fully delete it if you wanted to, but if you want to save it as like a repository, then you can just hide it. And then it's tucked away. It's going to be available to you if you want it later, but at least it gets it out of the flow. And that way, the only things we see are the ones that we actually want to see. And it's doing it slow there, but you can see it tucks the channels away as I hide them. So it's kind of nice if you want to save old project repositories. In terms of vendor and customer access, I'm going to defer to any of your individual governance standards. I think it largely depends on kind of your industry. If you're working governmental industries, you want to be extra cautious about adding vendors in there. HIPAA protected stuff, you want to be cautious about what you're actually putting in there and what's exposed to those people. So just kind of defer to your own individual governance standards for vendors and customers. Let me look through here. Can you clarify when you use notes and comments within a task? Yeah, so I like to use, what I like about notes and comments is that say I've got this task. This is one that I just assigned the other day to one of my guys that said, hey, review this report. That was the task I basically gave him. So I said, I want you to do it by Wednesday. I'm going to add this task. And what's nice about the notes is that the notes can show up in more of like, here's your FYI about this project. Like this is a report for the audit, right? And when you put in a note, you can actually click on this little show on card button. And then when I look at the note from there, it's going to show up what that note was. On the flip side, the comments do not show up in there. The comments are stored in there. The comments are really more about a conversation piece because it's going to show who says what. We're going to say like, hey, I can't access this file, right? So comment is a conversation where a note is like a label. And there's a lot of flexibility of what you want to show on the card. Like if I was to add a checklist, like call this person, right? I could show that one on there as well too. You can kind of decide which ones you want to show on the individual board. All right, other people. So the, let me think about how to say that too. Other people, I want to say that these are kind of open. I actually don't know the answer to that question, Flea, about who has access to these ones. I think it's just your whole team can access them, but I could be wrong. Let me look into that one. I do want to follow up on that. I'm going to put a comment in there on that one. All right, let me get through some more of these here. Joe said, if I add OneNote, does this mean that anyone in that Teams channel can see your own personal OneNote? Yes, in theory, Joe. If you add in your OneNote into there, they could see it. But the way that that works is that when they click it, they'll have to then get approval from you to actually view it. What I recommend is just having the team OneNote instead of your own personal OneNote. So what I would do is I'll keep my own OneNote separately. That could be like a private OneNote or a private channel where I could put my OneNote. And then I've got the OneNote for the team where we put all of our individual project notes. But yes, in theory, if you put your OneNote in here into an open one like that, they could, in theory, dig through more of your stuff. But again, you would get that pop-up that says, you know, Mike is requesting access to your OneNote. And then you could say, hey, you know, don't, right? All right, let's see. What's the difference between linking OneNotes or a wiki to a Teams channel? Yeah, Eric, that was the same thing. Everyone can see and edit the content you enter in OneNote. Yes, that is true. Yes,
Sean, could you please start moving the questions to answer or dismissed once you answer those questions so that we have a clean list of unanswered questions?
Oh yeah, I'm clicking answer live on them as they go through rather than typing the answer. So I'm clicking on them as they go. The ones at the bottom are done. Let's see.
Thank you.
Janet asked if you can incorporate existing MS projects. Yes, you can. You can incorporate project into Teams. That was the last one I showed. You can take notes during a Teams meeting, but it doesn't save to a OneNote file. Can you explain why not? Yeah, that meeting experience, Janet, they're working on that one, I've heard. So in theory, later it will do a little bit more like that. But that meeting board, the one that you use in the actual team meeting, I should like pull one up here real quick. I'm just going to start a quick meeting here. If it'll start. But yeah, this meeting notes spot is kind of, I feel like they kind of are letting this die because it's not being utilized as much. You're better off just utilizing the OneNotes instead of these meeting notes spot. The meeting notes are conveniently placed, but they're not as useful in my mind. All right. Let's see. Someone said the time is incorrect on my Teams. Date shows 3:06. I would contact your IT admin. There might be something on their side with the Teams times and whatnot. I've had issues incorporating MS Project into Teams. Yeah, Rachel asked, she had issues with incorporating MS Project file into Teams. It is not, they're not focused on that part yet, is my understanding. So there is some like, not always, the interoperability between MS Project and Teams isn't all the way there yet. I think that's what they're going to be focusing on a little bit more, because now they're focusing on integrating Project with Dynamics, which is another part of Microsoft. And I think when Dynamics is more involved, then they'll have some more flow within the project space too. But yeah, it's a little bit fuzzy still there. But what's the difference between OneNote and Teams channel? Yeah, there is always these wikis as well. Someone asked about what's the difference between linking OneNotes and wikis to a Teams channel. Wiki is in there as well too. I personally don't like Wiki. It doesn't work very well in my mind. But Wiki is nice for like a reference material spot. What I've used wikis before is that like for a go live, if I want to put an FAQ, I'll throw it in a wiki for reference, and that way people can't go in and edit it. So wiki is kind of good for a reference spot, whereas OneNote is going to be that more flexible where more people can actually change things as they go through there. I'm just reading through this one. Okay, so someone asked, do I need to set up in Teams a structure, or do I need to set it up in SharePoint, or do I build in directly? Basically, my understanding or the best way that I've seen is that you start it by creating a team. It is possible to do it the other way, and like, for example, if you got an existing SharePoint, you can actually migrate it to a Teams, but that requires having the admin access to do. The SharePoint migration itself is a much more kind of involved, like org-wide project to do. So generally it's easier just to create the new team and kind of build out from that direction as opposed to the reverse. Someone asked about smart sheets. As far as I know, you can integrate smart sheets. I honestly have never used or don't know much about smart sheets. So maybe, I'm not totally sure. Felice said, if you want to use a Kanban for a general channel, how do you allow the different team members to use it? They'll be able to access it when it's in that channel, but I will research about that security one as well too. The other question you asked. Yeah, Morgan asked about Power Automate. Yes. Yeah, and Morgan, if you're still here, that one we can talk more in depth about later too. If you want to like send me a message on LinkedIn if you're still in it. Because I can kind of show you how I built those ones as well too. So just let me know. Seems open SP. Where do you see the channels? That's a good question. Someone asked, when you open these in SharePoint, where are the channels appearing? So let's say I want to pull it open. Open this in SharePoint. Now it's the maneuvering isn't the best, but when I pull up into here, it showed me I'm right in general. But if I click documents here, there's all my individual channels, at least for the files. It's not going to keep the posts or anything in there. If you need the posts, you got to go back to here and look at it that way. But the files are going to be directly right there. So I can, navigate through my different file locations depending on what I need to from opening it in SharePoint. As a way to organize all the teams I've been added to. Yes, there is. Some people are getting teams happy. People are wanting to make a bazillion teams, and that's why Microsoft doesn't like that. So I'll show that real quick. One thing you can do is that you can sort them and collapse them. So that's what I was kind of showing earlier. I've got all these ones I don't care about, so I'm going to just collapse them. You can arrange them as well too. Like you can drag them and drop them into different spots. And then what I particularly like is that you can pin them. So say that this is, my implementation news one. Say I really care about this announcements one. I'm going to be utilizing this a lot. When I click this little ellipse next to it, I can pin it. And it's going to show up right at the top. So my important channels I can put right at the top, and it's going to make it easier for you. And you can also use this filter feature up here to find exactly what you're looking for in there as well. So you can rearrange things as needed too. But yeah, you may tell your organization to stop making so many teams, right? All right. Does Teams have the capability to assign tasks and tracks? Yes, Angela. I think I showed that at the end with the planner and tasks thing, so I won't go back into that one again. You can have a general section tags. You have to create the groups for every project. Yes. So the question was around tags. If you can't have a general section of tags, there is the yeah, basically, no, you can't make a general tags, unfortunately. That would be really nice, but you do have to maintain them for each one. That's generally why it's better to not have a bazillion different teams, because then that's a bazillion different tags to maintain as well, too. If you have just like your special project team where all the individual projects are in, then you don't have to worry about adding in those individual tags every single time you do it. But yeah, there's no way to make an overall list. It's per team is where the tags are set. Is there a maximum number of channels one can have in MS Teams? As far as I know, no, but I don't recommend making that many channels because then it gets like overload. I think I've seen a lot of times where people want to make a channel for everything. Like we had an implementation where we are supporting a go live, and they want to make a channel for every single different location, like emergency room, inpatient, hospital, scheduling, and it was just overload. Like there was too much stuff. It was much more effective if we just had the one place where we just did all the work instead of 50,000 different channels in there. But yeah, as far as I know, there's no limit to channels. Can Teams posts be referenced to project tasks and deliverables? To an extent, there's some flexibility with the posts. Like you can, if say I've got this post in here, Sunil asked if Teams posts can be referenced to project tasks and deliverables. I mentioned how I like these better than doing emails. What you can do is with this Teams post is if you click the little ellipses up here, oh, my screen just, oh, something changed there. You can send a link to this post to someone, and you can also email this post as well too. So say I want to shoot this off to somebody directly to say, hey, you know, what do you think about this post or something? They can access it that way. But again, they need to be a member of the team to be able to see it. But it's still kind of nice if you want to discuss something directly. You know, say I want to shoot this to my manager. I can, you know, grab it to my clipboard and send a chat saying, you know, hey, what do you think about this? And I can't, I'm the only one in here, so I can't chat myself, but I can put this link in there. And again, it won't let me chat to myself, but that's kind of the idea, is that you can link to those ones. And then that link would always bring me back to that individual post I was just looking at. So yes, you can reference them in other places if necessary. And it's just that, either copying the link or sending it. Does everyone in the, someone asked about the finance tag as an example. Yes, for tags, they do need to be a member of the channel. So what I do like is that when we're doing these projects, sometimes people have been setting up teams where it's like, here's finances team, and here's the project team, and here's IM's team, like IT's team. They have their own separate team. But if you put everybody into the same team channel, that way is when you can do all those different individual tags more properly. And again, that's when your communication gets a lot more fluid, where you don't have to jump out and do an email for this one thing. Then we can go back and do a Teams post for this one thing. You can just put everybody that needs to be on this project into that same channel that's available. So that way you can just tag, you know, we'll say at security, can we assess file transfer? And then they can directly get that post from there. So it's kind of nice for that flexibility. As a tag, you have to be in the program to see it. Yep, that was the same thing I was just answering there. Managing teams displays over a period of time, we create, added many teams, some more priorities than other. I think, Joe, I think I showed that already. You're talking about like wanting to be able to sort through. Again, yeah, you can drag and drop them. You can rearrange them. You can collapse them. And you can also just delete them, get rid of them if you don't want them anymore. See if I have a product, multiple channels. Tom asked if I have a project with multiple channels, I can set it up where only one of the channels contains the documents. Yes. In theory, people could still put them in the other ones, because really every channel is another folder. Like you can't get this files tab to go away. But then you would just at least tell them, you know, only put them in this place or something like that. That it's going to require user direction at that point. Does Teams allow you to move a channel from one team site to another? That's a great question, Florence, and I don't think so. Florence asked if you can move a channel from one team to the other. I don't think so. Usually what I've had to do is I've had to recreate them. So when I'm doing designs of different things, I have my own channel that I use for designs. And when I'm going to actually roll it out, I'll have to recreate everything in there. A copy feature would be really nice, but as far as I've seen, it hasn't done anything yet. All right. Yeah, I agree. All right. Teams integrate with OneNote. We did go over that. Best practices for managing files within Teams. So you have the gold copies. That was the one I did answer as well too. That's like the private channels as opposed to the public channels. because a private channel will lock it down for you. What does the add member benefit? Does it allow users to use the same channel, edit it? The add, let me see, that was the add member. Oh yeah, so when you add someone to it, then yes, then they will have access to it. But again, depending on how you set up your member permissions, that's what they would have ability to do or not. So by default, when you put someone on a team, they can use the same channel, they can edit the same channel. But if you want to restrict them from it, then you can restrict it that way. And then for the private channels as well too. So say if I make my general one here private, oh no, I can't make a general private. Say, oh yeah, you can't make them private. You got to make new ones that are private. Forgot. So if I make it private, then at least that one has to be individually added to. And they will not be able to access that individual one unless you add them there. Someone asked if you can delete a channel, change the channel name. Absolutely, yes. You have total flexibility to do that. It's all in this edit channel spot. You can change the name right there, or you can then just delete the channel as you need to. Can Teams integrate with project? Yeah, I did show that at the end. Does it mean we can access files we stored in Teams? It can be accessed in SharePoint? Yes, so yeah, everything you do in Teams is driven by SharePoint. The file storage in Teams is not Teams. You're storing it in SharePoint directly whenever you put a file in here. So yeah, it's fully integrated. My company hasn't implemented Teams. Wonder any tips as we begin the discovery work to add these apps. I showed that earlier. That Microsoft Learn website is really good. Honestly, going through and looking at the certificate that I have is one that I would recommend, honestly, if you're going to be implementing Teams, because let me try to find it here. Teams. Here we go. So yeah, on these learning paths, there's all the different things related to Teams in here too. So if you're going to be setting up Teams for organization, this is an hour-long course that goes over that. There's more depth into security and compliance. If you want to link up your phone systems directly in Teams too, I'll throw that link here in the chat just for anyone as well too. Yeah, Joe put a comment, would love to attend other sessions. I am open to ideas of other sessions too. So if there's something Microsoft-y you want to see, let me know. I'll do it. give me some time and I'll figure out a workshop or anything else from there. So I'm looking for ideas of what people want to see. But yeah, the Learn site is really, really great. It's all free. You have access to everything on there. There's all sorts of different guides and classes, and you can actually do the certifications if you do want to do them. Again, it's not optional. You can at the very least just study how to do all this stuff. I will say some of the things on here get a little more technical, but it's still good to get that technical stuff, especially if that's what you're looking for. Virtual machines with a MacBook. I don't know enough about Mac to answer that confidently, so I'm going to ping that for later. Follow up. Once in OneDrive, can you switch between different OneDrive accounts? Yes, you can. It's a little bit, you have to go and actually sign out. Someone asked if you can switch between different OneDrive accounts. If you have multiple OneDrives, then yes, you just need to sign out. Like right now, I'm signed into my consulting one. I could sign into my individual one and do it from there. But otherwise, what's nice is if you have them integrated on your browser. I got my Jersey Shore download there. You can see that they're all going to show up individually for you right there as well too. So you can actually toggle between them just directly on your computer too, once you've got it fully synced. Would you consider giving a future presentation doing a deep dive on Microsoft Project for the web? As soon as I learn how to use Microsoft Project for the web, yes, I'd love to. I'm trying to learn about Roadmap myself right now too. So yes, Jamie, I'm looking at that. Can you sort tasks by due date? Yes, you can. You can sort a lot. You can do a lot of sorting in the planner section there. Yes, I already answered that one. Can the tasks and teams be exported out to MS Project? Jamie, I don't think they go out of Project. I don't think they go back into Project, but if you do from Project Online and do the task integration thing they have there, it does have some connectivity. Again, I haven't fully explored how that works yet because I don't even have my own license to Project yet. But yes, in theory, it looks like there's some connectivity with MS Project Online. Again, I don't want to speak to the full details of that because I don't know it myself yet. Can I set up planner email notifications based on task due dates? Yes, the planner will automatically send you email notifications on due dates. You don't have to do any setup at all. So planner will, that's what I was saying before, that planner will chase you. Let me see if I can even find my, I'm going to pull up my work email just to show you how it looks. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Here we go. Planner. So this is like my work email. So it sends me this thing saying, hey, you have a task due today. And it's going to show me a link to that one. It shows me what project it was from. And it's got all those things directly right in there. So I could click that and it's going to bring me right to my task. I don't want to go further than that because I'm on my work stuff there. But yes, it does automatically follow you. Can you set up a SharePoint site or team sheet to show weekly team meetings to show the agenda? Yes, Bruce, you absolutely can do that on the channels here. You can actually have a meeting within the channel directly. So that one I do like, where you can actually, when you're scheduling a meeting, let me find calendar here. I can say I want to have a new meeting. And this is the field that I think a lot of people don't realize is right here, is there's this add channel spot. And you can actually put that meeting to be in that channel. So I'll stick with that one I was using already. Say I want to do an announcement meeting. Hopefully it'll let me do it. Let's see. But yeah, I did it as an announcement. Shows up there like my normal meeting. And then now I have that meeting scheduled into that Teams channel. And then this is where you can go in and set up some things ahead of time, like adding in your notes for the agenda for the meeting, double check your scheduling assistant. You can even start utilizing the chat. So if you want to start putting some files in there ahead of time, say I want to do, I'll drag this one in there. Why is it not allowing me to drag anything today? That way you can put things in there ahead of time into the meeting directly. Give it a second there. Like say this is my agenda. My computer's running so slow today, holy cow. There we go. So then that way in this meeting, I've already got some files that are starting in there. You can say like, hey, agenda will about the new EPMO project. And then that is all set in there ahead of that meeting that we're going to have later. And they've already got all those files and information, and people got all those pop-ups directly. And again, the meeting itself is inside of the channel. And what's especially cool is if then you record that meeting, it will stay there recorded for you in the channel as a file. Even more stuff. Karen asked about virtual backgrounds. Yes, you can do virtual backgrounds just like Zoom. Didn't cover that too much in depth here, but yes, it is doable right here. It's not gonna let my camera do it because I have my camera connected already, but yes, you can do virtual backgrounds in Teams. Does Teams give you an alert or tie your calendar to upcoming deadlines? Christina, with the calendar, yes, it does. If you are using the Outlook calendar already, like this is my Outlook calendar, it's directly in Teams directly. It does, it will, if it was those deadlines from those things like tasks, and yes, it does give those ones as well too. And I kind of showed that email as well. Let's see, using Teams at work, and note every time I set up a team meeting in Outlook, a new chat session is created. Is there a new way to okay. I'm trying to read through this one, Scott, here too. Is there a way to create a new Teams channel? Not, well, kind of, yes. So Scott asked, you know, whenever I set up a Teams meeting, it makes a new chat session. Is there a way to create a new Teams meeting in Outlook and link it to an existing Teams chat? What you can do, it's even easier, is actually when you're in the chat, and I don't think I'll be able to do it in here. Maybe it'll let me do it. It's not going to let me fully do it in here, but basically if you have an existing chat, there is a meeting button up in the corner, and you can actually have a meeting in that same chat with the same people you have. So don't even go to Outlook, just do it directly in Teams, in the Teams chat. Look for that meeting button up in the top right, and you can have a meeting with the chat itself. So yeah, doing it with Outlook is more complicated than needed. Just do it right in the chat itself. I think this is the one here. Can you set up a SharePoint to show weekly team meetings, show the agenda? Oh yeah, that was the one that was what I showed already, where you can do it on the left part there too. They are one of the articles I saw is that they are working on improving the meeting experience. Allegedly they are going to be doing more things like kind of similar to that too, where they want to have different things that are accessible to you to set up those agendas a little bit nicer. I wish I could find the article. They presented something at Ignite, which is their conference, talking about how they're going to improve the meetings as well too. So it's coming. Yeah, I don't see any of the articles about it right now. All right, let me just see. Did I miss any here? And I'm going to go through and still type up all these and email them out, even for the people who had to leave too. Let's see. Oh, we got a couple new ones that came in here. I have an existing SharePoint site I've been using, and we just introduced Teams. When I create a channel in a team I created, can I link to the existing SharePoint site? So Marina asked about using linking to an old SharePoint. That's technically more of an admin thing at that point to be able to link fully. You can, in theory, add in the library at least. So like say when I go into here, I can click onto my announcements, and then I can go in and add a document library. And then this is where you're looking for that existing link. So if you've got a link to where your files are currently, you can plug it in there directly. The problem with that is that it's still then just going to keep that document library over here and your Teams libraries over here. So I do recommend eventually like migrating fully into, you know, put your old files into here directly. Like what I did with some of our stuff internally was I just copied all the old SharePoint stuff into this new file and then like put stuff in an archive too. So that's an option, at least to bridge the gap. But yes, you can add in other SharePoint libraries to this individual spot too. Can you clarify when you do notes or comments within tasks? I think I did go over that one already. Planning to do intended to replace Jira and Agile board. In other words, project that are not Agile. Yeah, planner and to do is not specifically just project management, but it works very well for project management. So if you want to use it for a board, then yes, it does work to replace that. I don't know if that was necessarily Microsoft's intention, but they have been pitching tasks as being Agile appropriate or like for Agile use tasks. So that's what they're selling it as. Again, I don't know enough about Jira to know how functional it is compared to tasks. But I mean, that's at least what Microsoft seems to be trying to do, is to compete with that. Because again, everybody is about Agile right now. These ones are all answered. These are good. Good. Okay. Oh, someone asked to clarify the notes versus comments. Yeah, let me show that one more time because that was a funkier one. Let me find one of those. Why is it moving so slow on me here? Let me just add a new one here real quick. I want to grab my Kanban there. And say if I'm in here, the difference between a note would be like what I put in as the person putting in the task, describing what this task is. So what do I mean by develop risk management plan? This is where I could put in my description of what I'm looking for in this task. Then down below instead is the comments, and the comments is where you can have a conversation inside of the task itself. So the notes is like a label, a description, anything like that. Whereas the comments is, you know, we can say like, you know, hey, I'm almost done with this, something like that, right? And this is a comment chat location, basically, as opposed to a note that's just going to be the, here's what this plan is, right? You know, type this one in for future projects. Now it's hypothetical something there. And it shows up as like a label that way too. Again, this one shows who said it. This one is just a note that's accessible. If I add an app to this, someone asked if you add an app to the Teams channel, does it show up in the SharePoint site? Yes, you can. Yes and no, not right away. But you can, when you go into here to customize those pages, you can actually add the app right to the SharePoint page too. And it's not fully updated. Like this is, it brings you just into the old school kind of apps for SharePoint. So it's not recommended to do it with apps in there. Apps generally work better just in Teams as opposed to in SharePoint for now. I don't know if Microsoft's working on improving that one, but for the most part, it works like that at least. You can at least put the plans in there, which is kind of nice.